The pioneering Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung was one of the first modern thinkers to trace the spiritual thread which connects the ancient quest for gnosis to our times, finding a parallel with his own efforts to explore the unconscious. As his secretary and pupil, Agnella Jaffe worked alongside Jung for almost 30 years.
Jung was very much interested in all manifestation of mankind coming directly from the unconscious. Now, Gnosticism, or Gnosis, is not an intellectual wisdom, but a wisdom which was expressed by feeling, by the unconscious. But Gnosticism was something which gave an insight to the unconscious of man, how it functions. This wealth of images, pictures, visions, and so on. Therefore, he was very much interested. And also to see how deeply religious the unconscious is.
Jung began to study Gnostic ideas in about 1910, while he examined the dreams of both private patients and those in mental hospitals. He revived the Gnostic term archetypes to describe the mythical and mystical symbols and images that lie below the surface of everyday conscious life, but erupt from the unconscious in dreams.
Naturally led me on to a profound study of the archetypes. I got more and more respectful of archetypes. And the next question I asked myself was, now where in the world has anybody been busy with that problem? And I found nobody, except a peculiar spiritual movement that went together with the beginnings of Christianity, namely the Gnostics. And that was the first thing I studied, and then I saw they were concerned with the problem of archetypes.
Jung absorbed the Gnostics' theological myths and symbols, and even wrote a short essay in Gnostic style, The Seven Sermons to the Dead. Despite an immense gulf of time, he regarded the Gnostics as his predecessors in the search for spiritual awareness.
They have lived in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century, and what was in between? Nothing. And now, today, we certainly fall into that hole and are confronted by the problems of the collective unconscious, which were then the same in 2,000 years ago, and we are not prepared to meet that problem.
Jung called the Gnostic texts he studied well-nigh inexhaustible sources of knowledge for the psychologist. He connected them with the dreams and visions, the gods and godlessness of his own patients. His colleague, Professor C.A. Meyer, sees the modern search for spiritual knowledge, which is not satisfied by faith alone, becoming more important than ever.
His thesis was that Gnosticism is not philosophy or speculation or heresy, but that it is simply an experience of the soul. And curiously enough, the Jung Codex, which shows you the experience of the Gnostic, of life as a nightmare in this world, until you hear the voice somewhere coming from somewhere of Gnosis, that is a complete confirmation of his thesis that Gnosis is based on an inner experience.
Codex 1 from Nag Hammadi was named the Jung Codex.
He is quoted as having said, "I have worked all my life to know the psyche, and these people knew already." And it is true that the Gospel of Truth in the Jung Codex is such a vivid illustration of what man's predicament is according to Jung, that it could have been a falsification by a Jungian, which it is not.
For Jung, religious experience was the center of all human experience. His apparent preference was for the Gnostics' symbolic, individual search for religious truth rather than the mass appeal of the religious dogma which requires unquestioning acceptance.
He was very in great awe to the dogma. But he said only fools touch to the dogma. But what is necessary is that we understand it now in a new way. Namely, not as 100% truth, but as a symbol. That is a great thing. That changes everything.
What sort of religious upbringing did your father give you?
Oh, we were Swiss.
Jung created consternation at the end of his life when he gave an apparently Gnostic reply to the most obvious question about his religious outlook.
And did you believe in God?
Oh, yes.
Do you now believe in God?
Now? Difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know.
He was one of the few people in the Western world who was familiar with Gnostic lore and who saw that they were important for our civilization.